Every person in Chicago called her nobody. The most feared mafia boss in the city asked her one question, and her answer haunted him for years. Rain hit the windows of a small cafe on Chicago's South Side like bullets, the kind of rain that made the city feel like it was trying to wash away its own sins. Inside, the lights flickered, the coffee machine hissed, and Michaela Jennings, the woman everyone called Kay, wiped the same counter she had wiped 1,000 times before. She was 26, tired, invisible by choice. In this part of the city, invisibility was not a weakness. It was a survival skill, and Kay had mastered it. She kept her head down, she made her coffee, she watched the door. She never asked questions she did not want answered. But that night, the door opened differently. Not pushed, commanded. 3 men in black coats walked in first. They did not sit. They scanned the room like soldiers checking a perimeter. One of them touched his earpiece and nodded. Then he walked in. Jae Hyun Choi. The city called him Jae. His enemies called him Nothing because they did not live long enough to speak his name twice. He ran the Korean syndicate that stretched from Chicago to Seoul. Drugs, weapons, real estate, silence. Everything had a price in his world, and Jae always said it. He was tall, calm. His face carried the kind of stillness that comes from being obeyed without question for too long. He sat at the counter like he owned it. His men stood behind him like shadows. Nobody spoke. The cook in the back disappeared through the rear exit without a word. The other 2 customers paid and left quickly. The cafe emptied like water draining from a sink. Only Kay remained. She stood behind the counter, rag still in her hand, and looked directly at him. Not at the men behind him, not at the gun bulge under his coat, at him. "What can I get you?" she asked. No fear, no performance, just a woman doing her job. Jay studied her for 3 full seconds. Then he spoke. His voice was low, smooth, the kind that could calm a room or end a life. Black, no sugar. She poured it, slid it across the counter. Their fingers almost touched. She pulled back, not out of fear, out of instinct. Then she did something no one had done in years. She asked him a question. "You got a name, or do I just call you Black No Sugar next time?" His men stiffened. One of them stepped forward. Jay raised a single finger without looking back. The man froze. Jay looked at Kay like she had just spoken a language he had forgotten existed. His jaw tightened. Then something strange happened, something his men had never seen before. His eyes softened, just barely, just for a second. "Nobody asks my name," he said quietly. "Everyone just calls me boss." Kay shrugged. "Well, I am not everyone, and this is my cafe, so if you are sitting here, I should know who I am sitting with." The silence that followed was heavy enough to bruise. Jay stared at her, not with anger, not with hunger, with something worse. Recognition. Like she had reached through his armor and touched something buried so deep, even he had forgotten it was there. He paid for the coffee, left $500 on the counter, stood up, buttoned his coat, and walked toward the door. But at the threshold, he stopped, turned his head just slightly, and said her name. He had read it off the tag on her apron. Kay. The way he said it made her skin tighten. Not a greeting, a recording, like he was filing it somewhere permanent. He left. His men followed. The cafe was empty again. But something had shifted. The air felt different. Kay stood behind the counter, heart beating faster than she wanted to admit, and she could not shake the feeling that she had just opened a door she would never be able to close. 3 days later, a black SUV appeared across the street from the cafe. It was there when Kay arrived at 6 in the morning. It was there when she locked up at 11 at night. Different drivers, same plates. She told herself it meant nothing. Then the tips changed. New customers started showing up. Men in expensive jackets ordering drinks they clearly did not want, leaving $50 bills on the table and disappearing before she could make change. Her boss, a nervous man named Terrence, noticed it too. His hands shook when he counted the register. "Kay," he whispered one morning, "something is wrong. The Vicentes stopped coming around." The Vicentes were the local gang that had been shaking Terrence down for 2 years. $50 a week or they broke a window, 100 during holidays or they broke something worse. They were small-time predators, but they were consistent. Now they were gone. And Terrence knew what that meant. Someone bigger had drawn a line around this block. Someone who made the Vicentes look like children. "You need to quit," Terrence told her. "Whatever this is, you do not want to be in the middle of it." Kay did not quit. She did not run from things she did not understand. Running was what her mother had done. Running was what got her mother killed. Now pay attention to this next part, because this is where everything changes. One night, as Kay locked the cafe door, a hand grabbed her wrist from behind. She spun around. A man she had never seen. Thin face, nervous eyes. He smelled of cigarettes and fear. "Listen to me carefully," he hissed. "The Choi family does not protect people. They collect them. Whatever you did to get his attention, undo it before you become property." Before Kay could respond, two figures stepped out of the darkness behind the man. Jay's men, silent, efficient. They took the man by both arms and dragged him into the alley like he weighed nothing. Kay heard a short, muffled sound, then nothing. She stood in the cold for 10 seconds. Then she did what nobody expected. She walked into that alley. The man was gone. Jay's men blocked her path. "Go home," one of them said, polite but firm. Kay reached into her pocket, the $500 bill Jay had left 3 days ago. She had noticed something. Tiny numbers printed on the corner in blue ink. A phone number, hidden unless you looked closely. And Kay always looked closely. She dialed it. Jay answered on the first ring. "I was wondering how long you would take," he said. No surprise in his voice, only patience. The patience of a man who had already planned every move. "We need to talk," Kay said. "Yes, we do." A pause. "I'm sending you an address. Come alone. And Kay," his voice dropped, "do not make me ask twice." If this story already has your heart racing, subscribe now, because what she finds at that address changes everything. And trust me, you do not want to miss it. The address led to a penthouse in the Gold Coast, glass and steel overlooking Lake Michigan. Beautiful from the outside, but the windows were tinted so dark you couldn't see in from any angle. A fortress disguised as luxury. Jay sat alone at a long dining table set for two, candles lit, food untouched. He stood when she entered, not out of politeness, out of something closer to respect, like she had passed a test he had not told her about. "Sit," he said. "I will stand." He almost smiled, almost. "Fine." Then he told her the truth, part of it. The gang that had been extorting Terrence was not random. They were testing Jay's borders, pushing into his territory one block at a time. And when Kay asked Jay his name in front of his men, when she treated the most feared man in the city like a regular person, the word spurred. People assumed she was important to him, that she was under his protection, that she mattered. "In my world," Jay said, "perception is law. They think you belong to me, and that makes you a target." Kay's stomach tightened. "I didn't ask for this." "No, but it happened." He leaned forward. "I'm giving you 2 choices. 1, I relocate you. New city, new identity. You disappear. Or 2, you stay here, under my direct protection. You live in one of my properties. You work in my legitimate restaurants as cover. But you answer to me." Kay stared at him. Not at the penthouse, not at the armed men outside the door. At him. "No," she said. Jay blinked. "No? I did not ask for your world. I will not let you rearrange mine. I will handle my own safety." Something shifted behind Jay's eyes. A flicker. Then it was gone. His voice dropped to a whisper. "The last person who turned down my protection was buried in 3 different locations." The room felt smaller. The candle flames bent slightly, as if even the air leaned closer to hear what would happen next. Jay's men outside the door shifted their weight. They had heard their boss make threats before. They had never heard anyone survive the silence that followed one. Kay did not flinch. She held his gaze and said, "Then you should have protected them better." The words landed like a slap. Jay's jaw tightened. His fingers pressed into the armrest of his chair. For the second time, he was speechless. Not because she was brave, because she was right. He sat back slowly and studied her face like he was seeing someone else, someone from a long time ago, someone he had lost. As Kay turned to leave, she heard him speak to his lieutenant in Korean. She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. It was the tone of a man who had just found something he had been searching for. And that night, Jay whispered one order to his most trusted man. Find out everything about her mother, the name she used before Jennings. Kay went home that night and opened a box she had not touched in 9 years. Her mother's things, letters, a faded photograph of a woman Kay barely recognized, and a napkin with a single Korean name written in her mother's handwriting. Soo Yeon. Her mother never explained it. She died when Kay was 16, heart failure. Or that is what the doctor said. Kay always suspected there was more. Her mother had been afraid of something her entire life. She changed apartments every 2 years. She paid for everything in cash. She never used her real name on any document. Kay thought it was paranoia. Now she was not so sure. Meanwhile, Jay's lieutenant reported back with information that changed everything. Kay's mother was not born Denise Jennings. She was born Denise Park. In the late 1990s, she worked as a translator for the Choi Syndicate, Jay's father's organization. She was trusted, she was quiet, she was valuable. Until one night, she witnessed something she was never supposed to see. She disappeared the next day, changed her name, moved to the South Side, raised Kay in total secrecy. The syndicate assumed she was dead. They stopped looking. But she was not dead. She had been hiding for 26 years, and whatever she took with her when she ran, whatever she saw that night, it was still out there, somewhere. Jay sat in his office and stared at the file. The connection between Kay and his family was not coincidence, it was legacy. And if Kay's mother had taken evidence with her, information that could expose the old syndicate's worst secrets, then Kay was sitting on a weapon she didn't even know she possessed. Back on the South Side, Kay started asking her own questions. Old neighbors, her mother's former coworkers. Nobody wanted to talk. Doors closed in her face, eyes looked away. But one woman talked. Halmoni Cha, a retired nurse in her 80s who lived above a laundromat. She sat Kay down at her kitchen table and poured tea with trembling hands. "Your mother was not running from trouble, baby," Halmoni Cha said softly. "She was running from the truth about what she helped them do." That night, Kay came home to find her apartment door unlocked. Nothing was stolen, nothing was broken, but the box of her mother's belongings was open, and the napkin, the one with Soo Yeon written on it, was gone. Kay picked up her phone. She did not call the police. She called Jay. Not out of trust, out of strategy, because whoever took that napkin knew things about her mother that even Kay did not know, and the only person who could help her find answers was the man whose family created the questions. Would you trust the most dangerous man in the city with the secrets of your dead mother? Think about that. Comment your answer below, because Kay already made her choice. Kay met Jay the next day, this time on her terms. She chose the location, a public park, broad daylight, witnesses everywhere. I will cooperate, she said. I will help you investigate my mother's past, but I have conditions. Everything you find, I see first. No secrets, no filters, and I walk free whenever I choose. Jay agreed immediately, too quickly. Kay noticed. She filed it away. He moved her into a luxury apartment inside his compound. High ceilings, marble floors, a view of the skyline that made Chicago look like a painting. But the beauty felt like decoration on a cage. The doors had codes, the hallways had cameras, and Jay's men were always close. Her cover story was simple. She was consulting on his legitimate restaurant chain. Nobody questioned it. Nobody questioned anything Jay decided. For the next 2 weeks, Kay saw his world from the inside. The morning meetings where men spoke in whispers and left in silence. The phone calls where Jay's voice turned cold enough to freeze the air. The loyalty rituals where grown men bowed their heads and swore oaths that sounded like prayers. But she also saw something else, something his men never saw. One evening, Jay cooked for her, a Korean dish, kimchi jjigae. His mother's recipe, he said. His mother died when he was 11, cancer. She was the only person in his life who ever used his real name. Everyone else called him boss or choi or sir. You are the second person who ever asked my name, he said quietly. He did not look at her when he said it. He stared at the pot on the stove like it held something precious. Kay felt something crack inside her chest. Not attraction. Recognition. The same loneliness she carried, the same invisibility, the same hunger to be seen by someone who was not afraid. But she did not let empathy make her careless. That night, while Jay slept, she found his office unlocked. Inside, she photographed documents, financial records, property deeds, names, insurance, leverage. If things went wrong, she would not be empty-handed. Back on the south side, Kay's second-in-command, a man named Tae-sung, cornered her in the hallway. He was tall, sharp-faced, and his smile never reached his eyes. You think he is protecting you because he cares, Tae-sung whispered. He is keeping you close because your mother stole something from his father, and he believes you know where it is. Kay's blood went cold, but her face stayed still. Years of hiding had taught her that much. Thank you for the warning, she said calmly. Tae-sung smiled, wider. It is not a warning, it is a preview. Kay waited 2 more days, watching, listening, measuring. Then she confronted Jay directly. No games, no strategy. Just the question that had been burning in her since she found that napkin. Who is Soo-yeon? Jay was standing by the window when she asked. His reflection froze in the glass. For a long time, he said nothing. The silence stretched until it hurt. Then he spoke. My sister. Soo-yeon Choi was 7 years older than Jay. Smart, brave, the kind of person who made everyone around her feel safe. She worked inside the syndicate because she had no choice, born into it like Jay was. But unlike Jay, she wanted out. She spent years secretly gathering evidence of the organization's crimes. A ledger, names, dates, transactions, proof of everything the Choi Empire wanted buried. When Jay was 12, Soo-yeon tried to leave. She planned to take the ledger to federal authorities. She almost made it. Their father found out. The official story was a car accident. The real story was an order. Jay's own father gave the command. His sister died on a Tuesday night in October. Jay was not told until Thursday. I was not allowed to cry, Jay said. His voice was flat, controlled. But his hands gripped the windowsill so hard his knuckles turned white. My father said crying was weakness. He said she brought it on herself. Kay's mother, Denise, was Soo-yeon's closest friend. She was there the night Soo-yeon died. She saw everything. And before she ran, Soo-yeon gave her something. The ledger. The only copy. Or so everyone thought. I have spent 20 years searching for that ledger, Jay said, not to protect this empire, to destroy it. He turned to face Kay. His eyes were red, but dry. Everything my father built, everything that killed my sister, I want it burned to the ground. Kay believed him, and that terrified her more than anything, because believing a man whose entire world was built on deception was either the bravest thing she could do or the most foolish. Stay with me, because what happens next shattered everything Kay thought she knew. She remembered something. Her mother had a storage unit, paid for it every month without fail until the day she died. Kay inherited the key. She never used it, never even thought about it, until now. She told Jay, and the look on his face, the way his entire body went still, told her exactly what that storage unit meant. But in the next room, pressed against the wall with his ear to the door, Tae-sung heard every word. They went to the storage unit the next morning, a small facility on the west side. Rusted doors, flickering lights, the kind of place people used to hide things they never wanted found. Inside, boxes, dozens of them. Kay's mother's handwriting on every label, old tax records, photographs, letters in Korean that Kay could not read, and buried at the bottom of the last box, wrapped in a silk cloth, a leather-bound ledger with the Choi family crest burned into the cover. Jay held it like it was alive. His hands trembled. Kay watched his face and saw something she had never seen on a man like him. Hope. They loaded it into the car and drove back to the compound. Jay was quiet the entire ride. Not cold quiet, broken quiet. The kind that comes when something you have been chasing for 20 years suddenly sits in your hands and you realize the weight of it might crush you. They never made it inside. Tae-sung was waiting in the garage with 12 armed men. Not strangers, Jay's own soldiers, men who had sworn loyalty to him, men who had eaten at his table. "You always were too sentimental," Tae-sung said. He was smiling, the same smile that never reached his eyes. The truth came fast. Tae-sung had been working with the old guard, Jay's father's former allies, men who wanted the ledger destroyed, men who had fortunes and freedom to lose if that evidence ever surfaced. Tae-sung had been reporting to them for years, feeding them information, waiting for the right moment. This was that moment. "Hand over the ledger," Tae-sung said, "and maybe I let her walk away." Jay looked at Kay. 1 second. That was all they had. 1 second of eye contact that carried more meaning than 1,000 words. Then the garage exploded into chaos. Gunfire, shouting, bodies moving in the dark. Jay shielded Kay, pushed her behind the car. A bullet caught his shoulder. He grunted but did not fall. His men, the ones still loyal, fired back. In the confusion, someone grabbed the ledger from the back seat. When the smoke cleared, Tae-sung was gone. The ledger was gone. 3 of Jay's men were dead on the concrete floor. Jay was bleeding through his jacket. His face was pale. His breathing was shallow. Kay had every reason in the world to run. The danger she had been warned about was real. The man beside her was wounded. His empire was crumbling. His leverage was gone. She did not run. She pulled off her jacket, pressed it against his wound, and said something that made Jay's eyes fill with tears for the first time since he was 12 years old. "You do not get to die before you finish what your sister started." Jay gripped her hand. His voice was barely a whisper. "There's a copy. Soo-yeon was smarter than all of them. She hid a second one, and your mother knew where. She told you. You just don't remember yet." If you are watching this right now without being subscribed, ask yourself, would you want to miss how this ends? Subscribe now, because this story is about to break wide open. 3 days in a safe house, Jay healing slowly, Kay sleeping in a chair beside him because she didn't trust anyone else to watch the door. She spent every hour searching her memory, every conversation with her mother, every bedtime routine, every habit, every phrase. And then it hit her. Every night before bed, her mother sang to her in Korean, a soft melody, the same one, always the same words. Kay never knew what they meant. She assumed it was a lullaby, a comfort, a mother's way of saying goodnight. She hummed it for Jay. His eyes widened. "That's not a lullaby," he said. "Those are coordinates, hidden inside an old Korean folk song. Soo-yeon and your mother created it, a code only they would understand." The coordinates pointed to a Korean church on the west side, the same church Kay's mother took her every Sunday as a child, a place Kay had not visited in 10 years. They moved fast. Jay sent his remaining loyal men to secure the perimeter. He and Kay went inside together. The church was small, quiet. It smelled like wood polish and old prayers. Behind the altar, a loose stone that nobody would notice unless they knew exactly where to look. Behind the stone, a metal box. Inside the box, the second copy of the ledger. And something else. A letter. Handwritten, addressed to Jay. From Soo-yeon, written the night before she died. She knew she would not survive. She wrote to her 12-year-old brother. She told him she was sorry she couldn't stay. She told him she loved him more than he would ever understand. And she told him she was leaving him the one thing that could set him free. The truth. Jay read that letter standing in the dim light of the church. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His hands shook so hard the paper rattled. And something inside him that had been held together by rage and discipline for 20 years finally let go. He did not scream. He did not collapse. He just stopped. Like a machine that had been running on fumes for so long, it forgot what stillness felt like. A tear hit the paper, then another. He folded the letter carefully, pressed it against his chest, and closed his eyes. Kay stood beside him. She did not speak. She did not touch him. She just stayed. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone in pain is simply refuse to leave. She had learned that from her mother who stayed invisible for 26 years so that Kay could be safe, her mother who never got to explain why. Staying was the only language grief understood. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Tae-sung. "I know where you are." Kay looked at Jay. Then she did something that proved she was the smartest person in this entire story. She pulled out a second phone, one she had bought with cash 3 days ago, one nobody knew about, and she called a number she had been saving for exactly this moment. A federal prosecutor she had contacted the night Tae-sung first betrayed them. She had been building her own insurance, recording conversations, documenting everything. "It's time," she said into the phone. "I'm sending you everything." Federal agents moved within the hour. Tae-sung and the old guard were arrested at 3 different locations across Chicago. The ledger, both copies, was entered into evidence. The Choice Syndicate, the empire that Jay's father built on blood and silence, began to crumble. Jay cooperated fully. He opened his records, named names, gave testimony. Everything Soo-yeon died for, everything Kay's mother had spent her life hiding, finally reached the light. But freedom has a price. Jay faced charges of his own, reduced for cooperation, but real. The blood on his hands did not disappear because his intentions changed. He accepted the sentence without argument. The night before he turned himself in, they sat on the roof of the safe house. Chicago glittered below them. Millions of lights, millions of stories, most of them invisible. The wind carried the sound of traffic and distant sirens. Somewhere out there, people were living normal lives, going to work, coming home, kissing their children goodnight. Kay wondered what that felt like. She wondered if she would ever know. "You asked me who I really was," Jay said, "that night in the cafe. I did not have an answer then. I had titles, boss, Choi, sir, but none of those were me. They were armor, they were walls. They were the version of myself I built so the real one would not get hurt again." "Do you have one now?" Kay asked. He looked at the skyline, then at her. His eyes were clear, not hard, not guarded, just clear, like water after a storm settles. "I am my sister's brother. That is all I ever wanted to be." Kay told him her plan. She was going to use her mother's story and Soo-yeon's story to start a foundation, legal aid for women trapped in criminal organizations who wanted to leave but had no safe way out. She would name it after both of them, the Soo-yeon and Denise Foundation. Jay nodded slowly. They would have liked that. The next morning, federal agents escorted Jay from the safe house. At the door, he turned to Kay one last time. "When I get out," he said, "I am going to find you." Kay did not smile. She did not cry. She looked at him the same way she had the first night. Direct, unafraid, human. "I will not be hard to find," she said. "I will be the one people are not afraid to ask by name." Remember that the people who try to make you invisible only succeed if you let them. Your name is your power. Never let anyone take it from you. If this story is teaching you something, tell me in the comments what it is, because the lesson is not over yet. 2 years later, the building that once housed Jay's empire now had a new sign above the door. The Soo-yeon and Denise Foundation. Legal aid, education, second chances. Kay stood at the podium on opening day. The press was there, former victims of the syndicate were there. Halmoni Cha sat in the front row, crying quietly into a handkerchief. City officials shook hands and smiled for cameras. But Kay was not looking at any of them. She was looking at the room full of women, young women, women who had been trapped in worlds they did not choose, women who had been told they were nobody, women who had been made invisible. She spoke. "I am not here to talk about the mafia, or about crime, or about money. I am here to talk about names." The room went quiet. "My mother gave up her name to survive. She became someone else so that I could exist. She lived invisible for 26 years, and it kept us alive. But it also killed something inside her. Because when you spend your whole life pretending to be nobody, you start to believe it." She paused. Let the weight settle. A woman named Soo-yeon lost her life because she refused to stay nameless. She refused to be invisible inside a system that wanted her silence. She chose truth over safety, and it cost her everything. Kay looked at the women in the audience. Every one of you has been told you are nobody. Every one of you has been reduced to what you can do for someone else, your labor, your silence, your obedience. But I am here to tell you what I learned the hard way. Your name is your identity. Your identity is your power. And the moment you insist on being seen, the moment you refuse to answer to anything less than who you truly are, you become the most dangerous person in the room. A journalist raised his hand. "What inspired the foundation?" Kay smiled. "Someone asked me my name once. Not my title, not my role, not what I could do for them, just my name. And I realized that was the most powerful thing anyone had ever done for me, because it meant they saw me. The whole point of this foundation is to make sure no woman ever has to be invisible to survive." The room erupted. After the event, Kay walked to her car. The parking lot was quiet. The sun was setting. Chicago glowed gold and orange. A man stood across the street. Simple jacket. No suit, no entourage, no tinted windows, no armed men behind him. Jay. He looked different. Lighter. The weight was still there, written into his shoulders, etched into the lines around his eyes, but he was not crushed by it anymore. He carried it like something earned, not something inherited. He walked toward her. No words for a moment, just two people standing in the fading light of a city that had tried to swallow them both. 2 years of silence between them, 2 years of letters she wrote but never sent. 2 years of him sitting in a cell, reading about her foundation in the news, cutting out the articles and taping them to his wall, like proof that something good had survived the wreckage. "You kept your promise," he said. "You are not hard to find." "And you kept yours," she said. "You came back." They stood there. The distance between them was small, but honest. No fairy tale, no dramatic embrace, just two people who had survived a world designed to destroy them. "So what do we do now?" Jay asked. Kay looked at the building behind her, the foundation, the future, everything her mother and Soo-yeon had paid for in silence and blood. "We start by using our real names," she said. They walked into the building together, but this time, not into darkness, into something they had both been denied their entire lives, a future they chose for themselves. And if you think their story ends here, you haven't been paying attention. True wealth is not money. True wealth is not power. True wealth is the freedom to be fully, completely, unapologetically yourself. And the people who see you, who say your name like it matters, who refuse to let you disappear, those people are worth more than any empire ever built. That's the lesson Kay learned, that's the lesson Su Yan died for, and that's the lesson you are carrying with you right now. Now, let me ask you something. You just watched a woman refuse to be invisible. You watched her fight for her name, her truth, and her freedom. But there are stories darker than this one. Stories where the woman does not win. Stories where the betrayal comes from the person she loves most. And next time, the ending will not be this kind. If you are not subscribed, you will miss it. And the people who stayed with this story from the beginning, they already know what's coming. Don't be the one left behind. Subscribe to Tales by Wave now, because the next story doesn't wait for anyone. And seeds, when planted in the right heart, become forests.